Hi, this is Todd Blankenship with Shutterstock.com, and in this tutorial, we're going to talk about Vapor, our new library of smoke effect elements. This pack contains over 100 elements to add smoke effects to your videos. All of these elements were optically captured in 4K, and there are plenty of different looks to choose from. These elements are compatible with Premiere, Final Cut, and After Effects, although they'll probably work with any nonlinear video editing software. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use these elements in all three programs. Okay, so here we are in Premiere, and what I have here is this nice shot of someone fly fishing here. It's like a nice morning kind of shot, and there's already a little bit of fog kind of moving through in the background. And what I want to do is actually add more fog so the shot just looks even that much more interesting. So what I've done is I brought in the Vapor pack here. And when I drop it down, you'll see there's all kinds of folders in here. You got rings, the rolling fog. I'm going to go ahead and just add kind of a general fog ambience to this shot. So this element right here, I really like for this. You'll notice some of the elements are in slow motion like this. And then you also have some options that are almost like transitions, things that kind of start on a black frame and then quickly fog moves in like that. So here we go. We have the shot right here, and it's just some kind of swirly, tendrily looking fog, and that'll look perfect on top of this shot here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and drag it on top of our clip here. And first and foremost, these were shot in 4K, and our clip here is just HD. So I'm going to right click on it and scale to frame size. So just make sure that scale to frame size is checked there. And I'm going to go up to Effect Controls, and I'm going to drop down the opacity drop down here and set that to Screen. Okay, so now we have our fog kind of on top of the shot, and I'm going to rotate that 180 degrees. So on the rotation and the effect controls, type in 180, and now it's flipped. And so right now, here we go. Here's what we've got, and you can see there's some fog added to the scene now. Only thing is, there's some areas where it kind of doesn't look quite right, and I'd say this right here is one of them. It's just kind of popping off a little too much. And really what you want to do with these fog elements, especially when you're compositing them, is make them as subtle as possible while also still adding the effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go up to opacity here, and I'm going to click on this mask tool. And now I can just kind of draw a shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw kind of a shape, and I'm going to go under the boat and kind of come back up around, and you just want to close that shape off at the bottom there. And obviously we're going to feather that out quite a bit. So I'm just going to feather it, let's say probably right about to there. So that's to about 300. And another thing is that our scene here is very orange, and the smoke here is kind of just straight up gray. And you always want to color correct your elements for your particular scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a lumetri color effect onto our fog element here. And I'm going to go to basic correction. And here on temperature, we can actually make that element much oranger. So I'm just going to turn that up. And there you go. See, now it's blending quite a bit more. And I might even actually kind of retune the mask a little bit. Maybe I do want a little bit popping up into those trees, just like that. See how it's kind of blending in a lot better now. And so now here we go. Here's what it looks like after we've color corrected everything and kind of feathered it and masked it how we like. Okay, so here we are now in Final Cut, and it's pretty much the exact same for Final Cut as well. What we have here is just some deer just walking through this nice forest scene here, and what we're going to do is we're going to make it just a little bit more interesting and make it seem like a cloud of fog has just passed through. So I just grabbed one element from the pack here, and as you'll see, there's kind of this nice like moment here where it looks like a cloud is just kind of rolling through, a nice little fog cloud. So I'm going to start the clip there, just with scrubbing through, hit the I key to set the end point, and then we're going to go forward and find kind of the out point there, just right about there where it stops, and hit the O key. So now we have our clip selected here, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag that down, select it, drag it down on top of our footage here. And in Final Cut, everything's going to auto scale if you have that turned on. And we'll just go ahead and trim that to the end of the clip here. Just like before, we're going to select the fog element. And up here in the compositing tab, we're just going to drop that down and select screen. And in this instance, you know, that looks okay. You can kind of see the the cloud passing through. Looks about right. The only thing is this shot is actually kind of bright. And that's one thing you want to think about. Compositing is sometimes just as much about color correcting the fog element as it is about the shot below it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the deer shot here. And I'm going to go over to the effects panel over here and go to color. And then we're going to grab color correction and just drag that right on top. And so now we have this color correction effect up here. I'm going to click on this little arrow to bring up the color board. And I'm going to go to exposure. And let's just kind of fine tune that. So this will bring down the overall exposure. So I think that's helping some. But I'm going to go ahead and just start messing with the specific channels here. So here's the darks, the blacks. I'm just going to drop that down. And then I think the mids are really where this is going to help. So I'm going to bring that down quite a bit there. Something like that. And then the highlights as well are going to really help that fog kind of pop out. And then let's also just go to the color tab and let's just find a way to kind of add a bit more blue. So right here on this mid-tones, I'm going to bring that up into the blue area. So as you can see, if you drag that around, that's how you change the color of these specific brightnesses. So right here, we're messing with the mids. So I'm just going to push that into blue, a little bit of green too. Let's take the darks, push those blue as well. And we'll do just a very little bit of it with the highlights, just right there. And so there you go. Now you've got this fog element rolling through. And again, you always need to color correct your composited elements. So now we have this bluer scene and our fog is white again. So let's just go ahead and color correct the fog as well. So here we are. We have our color correction. I just dragged a color corrector effect onto our fog element. Let's go over to the color board and let's take the mids and push them blue, a little bit bluish green, something like that. Same thing with the darks and same thing with the lights. So now everything is colored and should be blending in together perfectly. And so there you go. Now we've got this nice fog cloud moving through our forest scene and these deer kind of walking through, checking out the camera right there. Okay, and here we are in After Effects. And After Effects is going to be the software that you're probably going to get the most use out of these elements, particularly for compositing's sake. And that's mainly just because of the aspect of motion tracking. So here we have this shot, and I think this looks like a really good opportunity to add in some atmosphere, some fog, and some elements from the vapor pack. In this shot in particular, there's a lot of areas of contrast and a lot of neat places that we could have fog appear from. And what we're going to do first is we're going to track everything in 3D space. So I'm going to select my footage here and I'm going to go over to the tracker. If you don't see your tracker, you can go up to the window and make sure tracker is checked. And I'm just going to hit track camera and you should see this blue bar pop up. And if you watch up here, you can see initializing. And what it's going to do is it's going to frame by frame track the motion of the shot and give you 3D data to work with. And it's going to take just a minute. Okay, so we've tracked the shot. And to get to the tracking data, what you do is you have this effect up in the effect controls panel. And you'll just click on that and then you'll see all of these points show up. And if you watch, these points all correspond to 3D locations in the scene. So to start off, what you want to do is start portioning out your scene in 3D space. So I'm going to just select a whole bunch of points right here. And what happens is you get this target. And with the target, you can actually mouse over it and kind of drag around and just double check the perspective of things. So this is looking really good. So once you've selected some points, you can actually right click and we're going to select Create Solid and Camera. So now we have the solid and it's going to be tracked perfectly to that wall. So to start off, I'm going to go ahead and size up this solid and I'm going to cover up that entire wall. So just keep kind of scaling and rotating till you've covered the whole wall up and just kind of scan through and make sure it looks all right. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and just go to our camera tracker and let's just look at this scene a little bit and see some areas that some fog might come out of. Let's say you want some kind of popping up out in this sort of alleyway here. Let's do it again. Let's just select these and we're going to select Create Solid. So now we have a blue solid and that's going to go to where that wall is. And you can actually just select one point and say Create Solid. And it's a good idea to kind of start naming them. So I'm just going to call this one Big wall left. This one's going to be wall right. This one's going to be alley back. And remember, anytime you want to get back to your tracking data, just click on that. All you're doing here is you're creating 3D position data. So this is going to be alley middle. And let's go ahead and put one on this car. Let's say the car is kind of idling or something. So let's just select that, say create solid. We're going to call that one car. So that should be plenty of data to go ahead and start compositing some fog into the scene. So what we have here is all these different folders. I've brought in the whole vapor pack here. And so I'm just going to start finding things that I think will work in this scene. Okay, I think this one's going to be good for some just general ambiance. So I'm just going to drag that in. And keep in mind, these are 4K elements. So once you drag it in, go ahead and right click, select transform, fit to comp. It's just going to scale it down for you. And I'm going to switch that over to screen mode. All right, now we can see what we're doing here. And I'm just going to drag kind of a square out of this middle portion here. And we're just going to go ahead and set that in 3D. So I think that'll be good in the alley middle position portion. So what I'm going to do is with the alley middle solid selected, I'm going to hit P, and that brings up the position data. I'm going to click on the position. I'm going to hit Command C to copy. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to hit P on the fog element, go to the position, and hit Command V. And so what that's done is it's pasted it in 3D space where that one point was. So now I'm going to scale that up quite a bit. And now if we move it up on the Y-axis and then the X-axis and kind of just put it kind of out in the middle of the street here, I'm going to go ahead and change the mask to kind of cut off the edges here. Something like that. Do the same over here. And then now select your fog layer here, hit the F key, and that's going to bring up the mask feathering. We're going to feather that out a lot. Okay, just make sure you don't feather it out so much that you start to see the edges of the element itself. So right there, it looks pretty good. And so now we have a bit of fog in the scene. And then, so as you can see, it's kind of subtle right now. But what's neat is you can actually, let's just go ahead and start duplicating. And let's push this one up in Z space a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and just change the time so it's not the same portion of fog. And let's just kind of keep doing that. Let's push this one back quite a bit in Z space. So this one's pretty far back. Okay, and here's what it looks like right now after a quick RAM preview. So let's go ahead and add in that exhaust pipe kind of thing. So let's find a good element for that. Okay, so this one right here, Fog 19A, I think that's going to work for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag that down into our scene. And again, we're going to make it 3D. And then I'm going to go ahead and steal the car position data. So I'm going to hit P on the car and copy. And then we're just going to paste that to the position data there. And so there you go. Now you've got right there, you can see our fog element is right where it needs to be. But obviously that doesn't look quite right. So we're going to set it to screen mode. So I'm going to select the fog element, go to screen mode on the overlays here. And then we need to add a mask around it. So I'm going to go ahead and scale it up just so I can see what I'm doing here. I'm just going to put a mask in kind of a shape that seems appropriate for this, kind of like that. And then we're going to hit the F key and feather that out quite a bit. And then let's go ahead and scale it back down where it needs to be, somewhere right around there. And let's rotate it. So let's just say it's kind of coming out of the back and sort of an angle here, and put it in position somewhere like that. And that should look pretty good. Okay, and now what I'd like to do is just add some general fog. Let's just find some nice fog ambience that we can add into the scene. This one's going to look good for this, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that in. I'm going to set it to 3D. I'm going to put it on screen mode. And we want this one to be right where it's at. This is going to be perfect because it's just going to be kind of moving in frame and adding just some general fog to the whole scene. It's just going to motivate all the rest of the fog by making it just seem like a foggy day. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and turn off all my solids, drag those to the bottom. And one thing that you'll see is this wall here should be covering up the fog of the scene until it wipes across. So we have this solid here that we set up before that we can actually go and use as a bit of an alpha channel for those elements. And I'm actually going to duplicate it for each of the fog elements that we have. There's a lot of different ways you could do it, but this is the easiest. Just drag a copy of it above each fog element, and then select all of the fog elements here. And on the track matte options, you're just going to select alpha inverted. So there you go. Now this solid is providing an alpha channel for the fog elements. So now we can go ahead and color correct our scene. So with a lumetri color effect, in the temperature slider here, I'm going to bring it just a bit colder. I'm going to change the tint, make everything a bit greener. So just pull it down, let's say something like 25. I'm going to turn the saturation down to probably about 60. And then we're going to go into the curves and just kind of add in a bit more contrast. So just kind of start crushing down the darker parts a little bit. We'll go ahead and bring up the lights. That's going to make this fog pop out quite a bit more. And then I'm going to just keep kind of messing with the color and the curves here. This is where I like to make fine-tune adjustments. So still need a little bit more green. Let's just pull out some of the red. And here's what we came up with after a quick RAM preview. So I hope you guys get a lot of great use out of this pack. There's so much to work with, so many different uses for elements like this. You could use them for transitions, for your motion graphics, compositing, all kinds of things. So I hope you enjoy experimenting with them and finding interesting and cool ways to get some really cool looks with these elements. And if you have any problems, feel free to contact our support staff. We're always happy to help out. Good luck with all your projects and enjoy.